Hugh, welcome. Thank you for coming. Hugh is the nation's favorite food hero at the moment. You are an inspiration. You help the animals. You have the vegetables. You help us all. Yes, I like that. Yeah. Your River Cottage cookbooks have won you many awards, and your fish fight series earned you a BAFTA and a Radio 4, The Observer, and Guild of Food Writers. Congratulations on that. Besides more than 10 cookery book series, Hugh's tea work includes recent hard-hitting campaigns such as Hugh's War on Waste, which helped change the way we think about the stuff we throw away while challenging supermarkets that definitely need challenging in the fast food restaurants drastically in the way they waste food. Hugh's current mission is to increase consumption to expand our veg horizons, fueled by his passionate belief that plant foods should be the dominant force in our kitchens. In his new book, that I hope you all buy, guys, River Cottage Much More Veg, he uses fruit, grains, pulses, nuts, seeds, spices, and herbs to produce a cornucopia of delicious, satisfying, and life-enhancing recipes. Ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
So, thank you for coming to the office today. You have quite a lot of people coming to see you.
It's great.
Everybody's very excited about the food.
Yeah, it's all about lunch, really.
Yeah.
It's always about lunch.
You should also come at breakfast. The amount of juicing that goes on here is...
I hope you haven't just had breakfast.
No. But it's good still. Bit of an open-ended question to kick this off. How did you get to where you are?
Gosh. All I can say for sure is there was never much of a plan. I've always sort of fallen into doing things. I learnt to cook as a kid with my mum. I was one of those restless kids who was always sort of needed entertaining, and if it was raining outside, I'd be tugging at my mum's skirt saying, "What can I do? I'm bored." And I think when I was 4 or 5 years old, she propped me up on a chair in the kitchen and got me cooking. And the first thing, I say cooking, I mean, I think she produced a bag of icing sugar, some green colouring, and some peppermint essence, and showed me how to make peppermint creams, which is basically green, edible, mint-flavoured Play-Doh.
Organic, of course, right?
I doubt it very much. We're talking kind of 1969 here. And my mum was a keen cook, but organic food was a distant and not very well understood thing. But I cottoned on pretty fast, and in fact, I just learnt. I loved cooking as a kid, and I had with that little introduction, that little sugary introduction to cooking. I was very keen on making cakes and desserts, and I became the pastry chef for my mum's 70s dinner parties, and I learnt to make things like pineapple mousse and profiteroles and chocolate roulades and things like that. Some of which still get knocked up from time to time on special occasions today.
One of my colleagues actually, when I told her that you were coming, she immediately said he has the best meringue recipe.
Ah, good. That's very, very pleasing to hear. Hopefully we'll get on to vegetables at some point today.
I know.
But yeah, no, but I mean, you know, those things, those little treats are important too.
When she said that, I'm like, he makes desserts? I actually was a bit confused. I didn't know that. Because to be fair, full disclosure here for everybody, I moved here in 2007 that I was telling you before. And it's when the fish fight show was going on. And I quite appreciated, not being from here, all the fishes that I eat are obscure because they're not in your language. So it was quite easy to go to a fishmonger and just show you up and be like, I want that. So between that and now your fight for vegetables, reducing wastage, everything, you clearly are one of the heroes or the pioneers of the good food movement. What happened in your life, in your family, in your eating habits that actually you just said, you know what, we need to do something about this? And
that's a good question. And you know, moving on from my sweet-toothed youth, I never really planned to become a chef. I've been cooking all my life, and I enjoyed cooking at university and with my friends. But my plan after I left university, I was really interested in wildlife conservation, and I planned a trip with a friend of mine, and we went to Southern Africa for 6 months. We hired a pickup truck. We bought a pickup truck, which we sold again at the end of the trip, and we drove our way camping a lot, visiting game reserves. We took a tape recorder with us and interviewed people working in the world of conservation. And I came back to the UK hungry to do more of that, and looking for a way to get back to Africa, maybe trying to come up with a book idea. But while I was doing that, a friend of mine was working as a waitress at the River Cafe, now celebrating this year its 30th anniversary, a wonderful pioneering West London restaurant run by two amazing women, as I'm sure many of you know, Ruthie Rogers and Rose Gray. Rose, very sadly, no longer with us. But I walked in one day and looking for a job in the kitchen or as a waiter, whatever, and someone in the kitchen hadn't turned up, and they asked me if I would stand at the pass and help dress some salads as they went out. And after the lunch service, where I didn't totally disgrace myself, they said, "What do you like to do?" I said, "I like making puddings." So they asked me, they said, "Can you make a lemon tart?" So as it happened, I had a lemon tart recipe up my sleeve. So I made a lemon tart, and they said, "That's not bad, and we'll put that on the menu tonight. It's not how we make ours. You can do that if you want to come back tomorrow." So I did come back tomorrow, and I ended up doing 6 months at the River Cafe. And I wouldn't say I never made it back to Africa, because I have made it back a few times, but that was the switch point. But there was something about that fascination with wildlife and the wider story of the planet that I think has always informed my interest in food, and has also allowed me, in a very lucky way, because of the TV work that I've done, it's allowed me to come back and look at the conservation stroke sustainability issues in the business of global food. And I mean, not just global food, but what we all choose to eat every day is part of that story. It's probably what we are choosing to eat on a daily basis is probably affecting the planet more than any other decisions being made by human beings. I mean, we know we do extraordinary things on this planet. We make extraordinary buildings. We build amazing electronic gadgetry, and we program it in brilliant and innovative ways. And that, of course, that affects the world. But probably nothing affects the world more than the way we produce food. It's the main reason we're chopping down forests, which arguably, well, in my view, not arguably, which we need to keep. We're doing all sorts of things often in the name of feeding the world that could ultimately jeopardize feeding the world. Because if we don't look after the primary resources I'm going off on one now, aren't I? The primary resources of the planet.
Stop it, everybody, veg.
Well, exactly. I mean, if we don't look after those primary resources in a sustainable way, we will run out of stuff to grow food on, and we'll be in trouble.
Great. Trying to
So what so we can. But the great thing, the exciting thing, is that we can cook and eat our way out of this problem by changing the decisions and the choices that we make. Many, many things are happening in the world that make those changes really, really hard. We are hugely under the influence of the industrial food machine, and it wants us to behave in certain ways because it's highly profitable if we do. And what it's become incredibly good at, I really am going off on one, what it's become incredibly good at is molding very inexpensive, highly subsidized, highly refined ingredients, essentially sugar, cheap vegetable and animal fats, and highly refined starches, wheat flours, a lot of it, but increasingly soy starch and things like that. Just re-spinning them into endless different products and putting little bits and sprinkles on that actually make them incredibly difficult to resist. It's pretty much an exact science, making inexpensive food very hard to resist and creaming off a lot of profit. And that's taking us away from the sort of bounty of natural foods that really should underpin our diet. And essentially, that's unrefined plant foods. That's what we need to put back at the center of our eating. Doesn't mean we have to be vegetarian or vegan. I am neither of those things. I eat meat and fish, but I eat meat and fish carefully, I hope. And to eat any of those things without thought is potentially contributing to the problem. To make your food choices in a thoughtful way is contributing to the solution.
That's actually perfect opening to my next question, because I've been Netflix. There's 5 million food documentaries, and I just love watching everything food related. And I've been watching quite a lot of vegan and plant-based documentaries. And they tend to be, both views tend to be very black and white. Either you eat meat or you never eat meat at all. One of them actually was the most generous one, saying it will not be sustainable. If the entire planet wants to eat organic, plant-based food 100%, it will not be sustainable. You do not have to be 100% vegan. You just need to be very mindful of what you eat. I was just telling you before, I currently have in my diet 2 vegetarian days a week, and I'm trying to incorporate a vegan one, which I really hope you help me, because I'm struggling without the cheese and the butter. But how do you think we should approach this in terms of quantities? Not only having the animals as a side dish rather than the main, how do you think people should approach this?
I think there are many different ways to approach it. And I mean, it is interesting to me that more and more people and young people are making the choice to be vegan. And I think it's a great choice. I mean, because I've written enthusiastically about meat, one of my early books was the River Cottage meat book. And, you know, obviously I cook meat and fish in the shows. People have assumed that, you know, other chefs have put themselves out there somehow being critical of vegetarianism or veganism. And maybe sometimes people have assumed that I'm in that camp. I think it's great that more and more young people are choosing to be vegan. I've got time for anyone with principles about food. Anybody who's thinking about what they eat and thinking about the consequences of the choices they're making. I think that's fantastic. So, and you know, if more and more people on the planet become vegan and vegetarian, that's going to help the situation. I do think there are ways to incorporate fish and meat into your diet. I think both foods can be very healthy if well chosen, and they can be sustainable, again, if carefully chosen. But the thing that's really difficult and damaging is this idea that was born of the great miracle of industrial farming, of industrial meat production, that somehow no meal is complete without meat, that somehow 2 or even 3 times a day, and it's, you know, the old great British breakfast fry-up, you know, once in a while, twice a year maybe, fantastic thing. But I mean, if you're going to have sausages and bacon for breakfast and a beef sandwich at lunch and then more meat or fish in the evening, if we're all doing that, there's no way we're not in trouble as a planet. So we've really got to balance things out. And I think, you know, meat and fish can be incredibly delicious. If you put a little bit of fierce heat onto them and you sear that edge of the steak or the crispy skin of the fish, you create a really special flavor, and I get that, and that's something we can enjoy. And also, in moderation, those foods are very healthy. They've got great proteins in them, good amino acids. They're good digestible foods. So that's kind of where I'm at. But to recklessly consume them as the sort of as sort of commodity foods is a big part of the problems that are stacking up that we're going to have to solve in the years ahead.
Very much agree. In terms of now jumping into vegetable specific.
Yes.
Your mother, you come from a gardener family, so you have an unfair advantage there, because in my family nobody has a green thumb. So in terms of growing, I've tried and failed miserably. I even signed up and paid for an allotment that is just now flowers, because I have no clue. Do you have any tips for us Londoners living in the typical non-outer space London apartment? Yeah,
I mean, I think if you've got any space at all, and it doesn't even have to be outdoor space, where you can put a pot with some soil in it, you know, you might, I mean, lots of people are into houseplants. I think, why not grow edible houseplants? I mean, that just makes me more excited at the fact that at the end of it, that I'm going to get some food out of it. It might just be a window box full of herbs, or one big pot with a tomato plant growing in a sunny window. Anything like that, anything that you've grown yourself is always going to taste fantastic. And just remind you, not necessarily consciously, but subliminally, that we connect, you know, that this stuff comes from the soil. We can take a bit of soil, we can look after our own bit of soil, and we can grow some food from it. And we're connected to the whole process. And, you know, we're connected to the problem, we're connected to the solution, we're part of it. So even on the smallest, I mean, obviously, if you can find an allotment in London and get a bit busy, people get really excited about that. And once you start doing a bit of that, from the people I talk to, people tend not to backslide. Once you start growing a little bit of food, it's a pleasure that becomes part of your life, and you tend to want to do more and more.
Is there like a super easy one of the vegetables or spices that can be like your...
Well, lots of things are much easier than you think, but I think the really important thing is to choose something that you'll then really look forward to eating. There's no point in growing a vegetable that you're not enthusiastic about, maybe just because it looks cool. Very easy to grow a courgette plant on a balcony or a windowsill. You can grow things. I mean, a fun thing to do is to grow things in a window box and direct them that way, and then let them climb up a trellis and harvest them on the floor above. You know, there's all sorts of fun you can have. Climbing
What's your
beans.
neighbors first, please?
Climbing beans and peas are easy to grow. Herbs, obviously, really useful because you can use a bit of them, you know, every day or a few times a week. Just grow something that you're going to get excited about.
Beautiful. Besides growing, any tips for buying vegetables in the supermarket? Farmer's market, I'm hoping, are ideal, but if there's no close by farmer's market, tips for buying vegetables in supermarkets?
I think that the ideal when buying any food is to know as much about it as you possibly can, to know the story of where it comes from. For me, it's that connection. Sometimes I've talked in the past about the idea of a sort of continuum, which I've sort of glibly called the food acquisition continuum, or FAC for short. Which is basically we're all somewhere on it, and at one end of it, over here, if you like, there are millions of us now who are almost completely dependent on made food, essentially industrially produced food, ready meals and takeaways. That's what we eat. We don't cook, we don't even buy ingredients, and we're at this end of the scale. Right down at the other end of the scale, and there's not many of the people on the planet left doing this, but you've still got a few Kalahari Bushmen, a few Amazonian tribes who are essentially hunter-gatherers who wake up in the morning and the only real issue is to feed themselves and their extended family and the others in their tribe. And they have an extraordinary range of seasonal knowledge in as far as there may have been left some land that they can still explore, historical and tribal and seasonal knowledge and the different value of plants at different times of year, and they may still hunt and fish. Not many of them left, as I say, but we're all somewhere on that continuum. And my whole contention, the whole River Cottage argument, if you like, from the very beginning has been, it's really good to get a little bit further down towards some kind of self-sufficiency, some closer connection to the origins of your food. And you can do it by, just as we talked about, growing food in whatever environment you find yourself in. But you can also do it in the way that you shop. And that means buying less anonymous food and more food where you as you buy it, you get a little bit of the story, you get a bit of the context. So that's why farmers markets and all markets have got a lot going for them, because you've got somebody there who's selling with passion something that they believe in. Maybe they've made it themselves, maybe they've grown it themselves. And the idea of a farmer's market really is they should only be staffed by people who are connected to, from the farm itself. So they can really tell you the story of that food. I get that that's not easy for everybody, but it does make shopping a real pleasure in itself, and the cooking thereafter, because you're taking with you back into your kitchen some of the story and some of the understanding and some of the connection with that ingredient. And that just it's a kind of mindful, it puts your mind in a better place than if you're cooking sort of cling-wrapped anonymous food from the supermarket and you couldn't even say which country it came from. Sometimes, if it's meat, which animal or animals, there's so much you don't know. I find it scary to be presented with food that I don't know anything about, and my basic rule is I don't eat it.
That's a good policy. And now moving specifically to this book, I have to say this is going to sound very random, but I already told you about this. I seriously have, love and respect for you for the swabs option that you put. I have
the swaps.
Yes. So yeah. I am very much like, yes, free spirit, everything's great. But when it comes to recipe, either I don't follow a recipe or I follow a recipe to the T. So if it says 336 milliliters of this thing tears. I really get very antsy if I don't have that.
Precision is rarely vital in cookery.
I agree, but still, it's
as a pastry chef, as a former pastry chef, well, not former, I still make some nice desserts. But yeah, if you're making a cake, you need to be there or thereabouts. But even then, there's probably a little bit more give than most people think. But for this kind of cooking and for the kind of nice, rich, tasty assemblies of different ingredients, you don't need precise amounts of anything. Maybe be a little bit sharp with your seasonings. Otherwise, you can relax. And what I've done in several books now is I've suggested a bunch of swaps. I mean, there's no reason at all why a carrot recipe won't work brilliantly with celeriac or parsnips or another root vegetable. It won't be the same, but that'll be part of the joy of it. It'll be exciting and delicious. So I've suggested a few swaps, but the idea really is that, make your own swaps. Do you think, well, I haven't got that, but I've got this. Will it work? Of course it'll work.
Oddly enough, it's just, I understand what you mean, and it makes sense, but in my crazy mind, I kind of need like you, the person who wrote the book, to tell me, it's okay, go ahead. And I feel kind of like validated, like, okay, I'll play with it. Let's go
It is okay.
I know,
okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, considering this is not your first vegetable cookbook, how do you come to the recipes? Do you decide and say, you know what, today I'm going to explore carrots, or today I'm going to explore, I don't know,
well, the first thing, when I'm not at all shy about admitting this, is it's a highly collaborative business for me, and I work very closely with two amazing people. One of them used to be my head chef at River Cottage, the cookery school, Gil Mellor. He's just written a beautiful cookery book himself called Gather, his first solo cookery book, which has rightly won loads of awards, very much in the spirit of what we do at River Cottage, food for friends, gathered from close by. And I've been working, so he's my sounding board for recipes, and I've also been working with my food editor, Nikki Duffy, for more than 10 years. So Gil, Nikki and I are a team, and we get together regularly and we brainstorm ideas for a book, and we go away and we cook different things, and we send each other pictures, and we get together again and have tastings and swap things around, and that's how we do it. First couple of books I wrote where I literally kind of sat in a garret and did them all on my own. The original River Cottage cookbook and the meat book. But since I've been working with Gil, it just seems he's so talented. It just seems natural to me to swap ideas with him. So we've got a pretty good system, and the recipes only make it if we all think they're damn fine. And I love having them alongside me to help make it all happen.
Do you guys do you test your recipes on your families? Is it kind of like,
oh yes,
my mother-in-law passes a test? Yes. Or?
We do. They don't stay just inside that collaborative circle. We have various people my sister does quite a lot of tasting and testing. Some of the team down at River Cottage, not just the kitchen team. This is really important that your recipes are tested by people who are not in any way professional cooks, because professional cooks won't read a recipe anyway. They'll do what they want. So we have a bunch of people who help us out with that.
Including kids, because that's another thing. I have 3 nephews, and it's quite challenging to get them to eat a vegetable unless you make a story of the magic of the tomato.
I mean, I don't necessarily put kids in charge of recipe testing, but I'm very happy for them to get involved with, and my recipes are being tested in a family kitchen, and hopefully they're passing the kid test at some level or other.
Great. If you could pick 1 or 3 favorite recipes from this book, which ones would they be?
That is so hard. I mean, I think what I like to say about the recipes generally is that what's so important that we recognize about vegetables, and indeed we should really say plants, because as you mentioned, of course, the whole spectrum includes fruit, seeds and spices and nuts, grains and pulses, as well as the things that we think of in an everyday sense as vegetables. We have to recognize that it's an extraordinary palette of different textures and flavors. Compared to meat and fish, it's an amazingly rich, broad world of flavors. And we're so hidebound and so dominated by meat and fish in our diets that we've hardly begun to scratch the surface of the sheer possibilities, the infinite possibilities of combining all the different plant foods in delicious ways. So the first thing I've done in this book, even more than in the last one, is to sort of throw out the rule book and just try things. So there's loads of recipes where I mix fruit and vegetables together. One of the things I'm doing a lot at the moment is just because I've got tomatoes in the greenhouse and plums just coming to an end now. There's a tomato and plum salad in there, and just the two different flavors. I mean, they're both fruits, obviously, even though we think of tomatoes as vegetables. But just the tart sweetness of one and the tart sweetness of another, yet aromatically they're completely different. As it happens, they go really well together. With a little bit of aniseed herb, like a bit of basil or torn tarragon in there, you get an extraordinary combination of different flavors. It's really exciting. So there have been lots of experiments there, and the recipe's there, I suppose. And I think, is it on the menu today? There's another roast beetroot, plum and tomato.
Is it
yeah,
on the menu?
it's out there.
Jason, it is? Yes, it is.
Which again
Go and eat it,
takes those two flavors and intensifies them through roasting and combines them with another thing, which is a root vegetable. And again, it's a really beautiful, deep, resonant spectrum of flavors that you get. So really it's been about having fun with that. And the other thing, of course, is technique. And when I say that, I don't mean in a difficult way. I don't mean, but when it comes to fish, we've got the barbecue, the oven, the frying pan, and yet for so long vegetables seem to be either boiled or raw in a salad. Let's roast more vegetables. You'd really challenge me to think of a vegetable that is inappropriate at any time to roast. There's a recipe for roast lettuce hearts in the book, where in a hot oven you caramelize those cut corners. Those little burnt brown bits that you get on the edges of your roast roots. You can do that with cauliflower, you can do that with broccoli, you can do that with lettuce, you can do it with leeks, you can do it with all kinds of things.
The lettuce thing I'll try, because
That let me off answering the what's your favourite recipe
yeah, well,
question.
you did say
the squash patties, which are on the menu. That's a little comfort. That just, again, you've made something there that's like, it's kind of a little bit like a veggie burger, but you've surrounded it with a few little seeds as well, and you've got kind of some chickpea in there and some squash, so it's got that satisfying, slightly carby comfort food thing, but with some seeds and spices just to give it a little bit of edge. And I think that's as satisfying as any kind of fried thing.
Beautiful. I have a list of now kind of like quick fire questions, which are very much like one or the other. Don't get nervous, it's fine. Is there any vegetable that you think isn't worth the while? One that you think, like, you know what, no. Or one that you just simply don't like?
Any vegetables that are not worthwhile at all?
Don't be shy. We all have something we don't like.
Ah, God. I'm just trying to think of... What's that?
Baby sweet corn.
Baby sweet corn. That's, yeah.
That's very random.
Yeah.
You can steal her answer. No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Thank you for
Christine.
coming to my rescue there. It's true that I can't get super excited about baby sweet corn, but even that, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I mean, I think the thing is do you know, there's one, I find bell peppers not super exciting on their own.
Oh, right.
I mean, they're sort of there's a nice kind of sweetness there, but I think they really come into their own when they're roasted and cooked and caramelized and blended with other things. And I always think that that thing of a salad that's got slices of green pepper and slices of onion, of raw onion, that you've got, it's like you've got harsh flavors that aren't being sort of mollified or blended. It's the salad that is lettuce, cucumber, peppers, and raw onions. It's like, those are all four great ingredients, but they don't necessarily just work if you plop them raw on the side of a plate.
It's like a plain salad, where you say like plain the flies.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather just have the lettuce with a nice dressing, or roast the peppers and the onions together, or break them down into really small, into a salsa. So you've got finely chopped onion working with the finely chopped pepper, and then maybe add some seeds and spices, and then, just kind of...
I hear you. No peppers on their own, impressive. You cannot say, for the next question, you cannot say something like Italian. 3 favorite items of food. For example, I could not live without tomatoes lemon, and rice. I would literally just give up anything except those 3 things.
Okay, it's really good that you've got your mind made up about this stuff.
Are you kidding me? I have like my death row meal planned and everything, and I ask everybody that I work with, even clients in interviews, the first thing I ask is like, before we talk about anything, what are your 3 favorite foods? I need to know what I'm up against, guys. Like, you know.
Well, should we say three favorite vegetables? Again, that,
I leave you that poetic license to you.
There are things that, 3 things that I think are kind of, maybe kind of we don't explore or do enough with. And I say one of these as someone who used to be quite rude about this vegetable, but I've really come around to cauliflower. I just think, and I've come around to it by virtue of doing things like barbecuing it or cutting it into thin slices and putting it in a really hot pan and getting a little bit of colour on it and then dressing it with some oil and seeds. Or it makes a wonderful soup. Cauliflower. Let's talk about the underrated. Celeriac is another one which looks like a big weird curly lump that you wouldn't struggle to get really enthusiastic about, but it's incredibly aromatic and it's got so many qualities, and also it's different. If you shave it in very thin slices, that's one thing. You can spread it out and dress it raw. Matchsticks raw is another, but then cooked, roasted again in cubes. Or one of my favourites, a mash of half celeriac and half potato is really, really beautiful. So
Jason does it often here, actually downstairs. He does like a mash of things.
Yeah,
Jason
or a
celeriac
celeriac gratin, thinly sliced chilies. Obviously, old school, you put a bit of cream in, but we don't necessarily need to go there. That's the other thing, that just this book is vegan. It's not written just for vegans, it's written for everybody. And so the last veg book was vegetarian, but included cheese and dairy and all sorts. But I wanted to take this to another level, just really to prove the point that I've been banging on about since I got here, really, which is just the extraordinary the underexplored world of these vegetables, where you don't need the cheese on top. Of course, it's fine and cool to put, and there's loads of lovely recipes that combine vegetables with dairy and vegetables with meat, but I just want to celebrate the vegetables in and of themselves and the amazing things you can do with them without. Then if you want to add something on top or put it on the side or serve any of these recipes next to a simply cooked piece of fish, I've got no problem with that. But right here, right now, it's all about the veg.
To be fair, we actually are very blessed here at Google, and we have such a plethora of foods that the vegan days are much, much easier because you guys give me such great vegan.
Well, because you have really talented chefs here, and I've
Really?
met some of them already, and that's fantastic. For an organisation in their workplace to be able to offer really seriously well thought about food that includes a really exciting attitude to vegetables is very cool, but it is quite unusual.
It is unusual, but I do love it. Thank you, guys. I have 2 questions left before we move to all of you guys being able to ask questions. Your thoughts on use by dates or best before dates, sell by dates? Do you think they're a suggestion or you should follow them?
Of course they're a suggestion. Use by, I've got a bit of a problem with, because it's quite a bossy thing. It's like suggesting you've really got to do this thing. And I think a lot of people, and I didn't really realize this, but when we did the waste series, I talked to people, they felt really compelled. They said, well, I thought the spinach looked fine, but it said used by the 11th of March. So, on the 11th of March, or on the 10th of March even, I had to bin it. You really don't have to. The first thing to be clear about is cooking foods. If vegetables are a little bit tired, you might not want to eat them raw, but you can roast them or make them into a soup or put them up, put them together with various other things. There's no real safety issue of anything that's properly cooked. Anything that's heated above 70 degrees for 3 minutes is safe. Now, one or two, I have to say, very few toxins that don't survive. Toxins, not bacteria. All bacteriological contamination is killed at 70 degrees for a couple of minutes. And that's, no doubt about that at all. There's a few rather unusual toxins that can appear in things like fermented rice that has gone off or beans that you have to be a little bit careful of, but that's a bit out there. Mostly, heating food makes it really safe. So there's no really real safety issue. So if it looks okay and it tastes okay, what is the problem?
Back home, we actually don't even use it as a suggestion. We just use it as a marketing lie. So when I moved here with a bunch of British people, my husband is French, they were all outraged that I never checked and I just smell things. And they're like,
yeah.
But if you have a cold, I'm like, I might get sick. We'll see. I don't know. Look at it. Smell it.
You've been equipped with pretty good sensory apparatus for telling you whether food is okay to eat or not, and we should. And we don't want to be disassociated from that. It's important that we know how to use the physical tools.
I don't know if your friend replied to your message, but in London restaurants, besides the full-on vegetarian or vegan ones, somebody that's doing great job at vegetables.
Aside from or including?
No, aside.
Okay.
One that actually could be serving meat, but they are very good at putting the hero part of the vegetables on the plate.
Yeah, I'm not great at keeping up with the London restaurant scene, and maybe I tend to go back to old favourites, including from time to time the River Cafe where I used to work. It's always taken their vegetables very, very seriously, along with their pasta and of course their fish and meat. But I am going to mention one place because a friend of mine took me to a place called Sonny's Olive Tree, which is a vegan takeaway in Cowcross Market, or I'm very bad. Does anyone know where that is? And it was so much in the spirit of it was just a beautifully simple, a few salads, a few cooked things piled up together, lots of brilliant flavours, and the queue was going halfway down the street, and I just took that as massive encouragement. Yeah. And any restaurant that isn't taking vegetables seriously, and I'm doing a piece of work for a TV series at the moment where we are going to be at the opposite end of your question, highlighting a few well-known chains who particularly don't take the responsibility of feeding vegetables to kids nearly seriously enough, because it's really important to, get young diners for whom going out to eat a meal with their family is such a treat. But to encourage them to think from the age of 5 or 6 that the world of eating out only consists of carbs, fish and meat is dangerous behaviour. So we've got to look at that.
I'm very excited about that because I'm actually against kids menus in restaurants. I think kids should eat the same thing as adults, just smaller portions. So the same vegetables that I should eat, kids should eat them.
Well, I think, broadly speaking, I agree with you, but I think that lots of families going out do like a little bit of help, but they're getting the wrong kind of help a lot at the moment.
Because you're just being led by the restaurant saying, oh, this is kid-friendly, and then they're just giving...
Would they like chips with their pizza? They'll be happy.
I agree.
Great.
So, guys, if anybody wants to come and ask Hugh any questions, or myself, I'm open as well. There's a yellow mic in the middle. Please go ahead.
It's an open mic slot.
Yeah.
2 quick questions. Which international cuisine excites you the most? And who's your favorite TV chef apart from yourself?
Well, I hope it isn't me. International, it's so hard because I think one of the great things about this country is the amazing access we have to some of the best food from all around the world. But I'd never actually been to India until 4 years ago. And I went there, I took a family sabbatical, I took time out 4 months. And it was an incredible trip. And we based ourselves in Delhi and went and did various different trips from there. And I had some incredible food, and it really opened my eyes. And that influence has found its way into this book. So probably India. Sorry, what was the other question?
Favorite TV chef?
Well, no longer with us, but Keith Floyd.
Yeah.
What a legend. What a legend. And I'm sure I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't been glued to Keith Floyd as a student. And what he did that I think was incredible, and I hope I've lived up to it in some ways, is he took food out of the studio and went to find out where it was coming from. And he met food producers and celebrated what they were doing and went out on fishing boats and cooked in the galley and that kind of stuff. And the energy around that and the excitement about provenance and food has always stayed with me.
Thank you.
Hi, Hugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Such an interesting chat. My question is, we're blessed with amazing chefs in our kitchens here, but we also have the luxury of micro kitchens all over Google. The other day I grabbed a bar It was delicious. I finished it, and then I realised it was made from cricket protein. It was called Eat Grub. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'd really be interested in your thoughts on the
world of eating insects.
the world of eating insects. If you've experimented with it, and if so, how do you see that evolving into everyday kitchens?
I think it's going to be massive and important. It's a really good source of protein. Of course, we've eaten insects forever. You know, it's been ever since we could call ourselves any sort of a human being. We've been insect eaters. It's only in quite evolved Western cultures where it's considered odd to eat insects. So, again, you know, potentially there's a great source of insects would be a great source of sustainable food, sustainable protein, and not necessarily exotic either. We can, I mean, I have experimented a little bit, but I'm only just sort of starting to get my head around it, and I think it's going to be massive. But, you know, mealworms, which you can easily grow at home, using actually little bits of, talking about leftover vegetables when they really are past their prime. Mealworms, you just have a few little carrot peelings or little bits of, you sprinkle them over the top of the bran that they live in. You've got these little black beetles, and they produce these wriggly little mealworms. I don't know if anyone's familiar with them. If you feed birds in your garden, you might have bought dried mealworms. But with this, you can. This is a really useful ingredient. Quite a simple, unoffensive taste to it. People make mealworm cookies now, which I've tried, which are pretty good. We've had some enthusiastic insect businesses come and talk and sell their food at River Cottage festivals. So definitely something not to be seen as purely eccentric. It's going to be highly relevant to some of the big issues we talked about at the beginning of this session.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shaz. This is Yogi. Sorry, he gets a little bit...
Hi, Yogi and Shaz.
So firstly, I want to thank you so much for coming in. I was so excited about your talk. I actually cleared my calendar for today. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about... I saw a program of yours quite a while ago about you doing a vegan or a vegetarian wedding. Don't know if you recall that.
Yes.
So I'm getting married next year, and sort of unlike traditional weddings where you have to request a vegetarian meal, I would actually love to do it all vegetarian, flirting with the idea of veganism. And if you really need meat, you can request it. I have actually had a few wedding planners laugh in my face about that already. So a couple of questions on that. One, have you done a second vegan or vegetarian wedding since then? Two, what is sort of the general feeling that you get from the guests on that? And three, who do I need to talk to hire you to do my wedding? Please.
Have we done a completely vegetarian wedding since then? I'm not quite sure, but we've certainly done some big vegetarian nights and big vegetarian events. Ben, who's here somewhere, might know whether we've done any more veggie weddings. Not completely. But I mean, I'm doing and in fact, I understand there might be a few tickets left if anybody's interested. We're doing a big vegan feast based on the recipes from this book at Borough Market tomorrow night. It's a fundraiser for the Borough Market Traders Fund for traders who were affected by the terror attacks back in June. So I love doing all vegetarian or vegan events, and I've just had another one come in into my inbox a couple of days ago. Born Free, the charity, the wildlife conservation charity, want to do a vegetarian banquet, and I'm putting a menu together for that. I love it. I absolutely love it. So do my team. And Ben and I work together, and Gil and I, and Gelf, who's now the head chef at River Cottage. And the one thing that all the River Cottage canteens are very big on veg. We have a whole section of the menu called Veg Out, which is 10 to a dozen vegetable side dishes, but always with a little extra twist, always something added, whether it's some seeds or a spice or a particular way of cooking things, as well as loads of vegetarian options right through the rest of the menu. So I take vegetarian and vegan food very, very seriously, and I think putting it at the center of a celebration is absolutely no problem. I went to my goddaughter's 21st birthday party last weekend, and she decided to have a vegetarian feast, and it was absolutely delicious. So yeah, lots you can do, and don't let your friends talk you out of it if that's the way you want to go.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And if anyone else wants to come tomorrow night, if you haven't got a golden ticket, it's in a massively good cause. It's going to be an amazing vegetable feast. It is 120 quid a ticket, but that is making a substantial donation to this amazing fund that's helping put Borough Market back on its feet. So if you're interested, Josie, somewhere here, she's just outside. Josie from River Cottage can talk to you more about that.
By the way, if you auction the tickets, you can donate that money to the cause. Just so you know, guys, we're running like a bit late on time, so if you have any super long questions, maybe for after, but short, come on in.
Hi, I'm Neeru. Thank you so much for your talk. It was really, really interesting. I have my own vegan Indian food blog, and I'm really into creating sort of Indian recipes. But I sort of find it quite difficult with some other cuisines to really find things which are, as you say, very veg-focused and really bring out vegetables. Do you have any... it's kind of contrary to a question asked before where you were like, which cuisine inspires you the most? But are there any cuisines you've found which, really difficult to create veg recipes from, but that you've kind of managed to find inspiration from?
I think that any areas that are difficult to create.
Yeah, any cuisines which are
I think
really
kind
more
of
veg-focused.
Somehow, I think sort of Central European cooking and old school British English cooking is not massively adventurous with veg. We have to face up to that. And as soon as you get around to other parts of the world, I suppose it's partly a climate thing, but I don't think that's a good enough excuse for us, because we know that in this country we can grow wonderful vegetables. But it's also a cultural thing where to be putting meat on the table seemed like a kind of priority and a kind of way of saying we're doing okay. Look, we've got meat every day, and I think that's what drove a lot of the idea that everyone could have a chicken in the oven every weekend. That's one thing, but a chicken in a sandwich every day, or a piece of fried chicken in a bun every day, that's led to industrial farming, and that's a whole different thing. But I think that the tropical cuisines of the world, and also often the peasant cuisines of the world are much more resourceful with vegetables. And so all over Asia, but also South America, you've got great traditions of using things like beans and rice as the essential food, and then jazzing them up with all kinds of delicious vegetables and fruit and spices and nuts coming into it. So, but we should all have that vernacular now. And I'm sure there's all kinds of influences in those recipes which I could start to deconstruct, but I wouldn't even be conscious of them when I put the recipe together. But definitely a lot of Indian and Asian in there, and I guess some Mexican and South American stuff. A lot of good ideas around veg come from there.
Thank you.
Go for it. If it's quick, you can come in.
Great, thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for your time. We've seen the advent of the Impossible Burger, and given that agribusiness is the single largest contributor to greenhouse gases on the planet, so basically it's warming the planet through cows fasting. With the advent of the Impossible Burger and meat being made from plants, what's your take, or how does this kind of resonate with you?
Look, creating meat-like textures from plants probably is not a bad idea, because so many people are attached to those consistencies and flavors. I haven't done the taste test for that so-called thing. So, but I don't think it's necessarily central. I think really being much more relaxed that without denaturing them or reconstructing them or growing strange things in laboratories, vegetables still already offer us a massive solution to the problems of global agriculture. But the thing we mustn't forget, and it's so easy to, is that ultimately it is our choice. And I get that huge amounts of money are spent on us making the choices that industry want us to make. And that's not like some big sinister conspiracy. That's just capitalism. That's just the drive of making money. And it's all about margins. And people have found out, as I said at the beginning, that cheap starch, fat, and sugar, all highly refined fats and carbohydrates, can be whizzed into any number of things. Somehow we have to push back against that by knowing what's really good for us and for the planet, and making the choices that are going to make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our last question, because we are 5 minutes over.
Hi, Hugh. I'm Alex. I have
Alex.
a question about children. You started talking about it earlier. So I cook in my house, and my wife used to be a vegetarian, so I used to cook pretty much 3 meals: kids' meals, my wife's meal, and my meal. I would love all of these things, and I think my kids would definitely like some of them, but there are, as you said, some complex flavors and spices in here. How best can I get my children, who are young, 2.5 and 5, to start adventuring more with their food and getting more of a sophisticated palate at that kind of age?
It's a really good question. Putting a lot of stuff in front of kids early is really important. Really early. I mean, I'm not saying you're too late, but there is something that kicks in with kids, which is that after a certain age, and it's usually the age when they're independently mobile, they become a bit mistrustful of new foods. And there's an evolutionary reason for that, which is that once you wander away from the immediate control of your parent figure, usually your mother, you don't want to be popping berries and things randomly into your mouth. So there's a little bit of protection kicks in. So you need to encourage your children to recognize as many different foods as possible as safe and exciting. Even if they don't necessarily like them straight away, it's important that they know that they're food. There's all sorts of things I didn't like as a kid that I've somehow come around to. Mushrooms, slimy, revolting things. Now I love them to bits. Tomatoes, couldn't go near one. Mainly because they used to be completely tasteless. Although I was addicted to tomato ketchup, so there was kind of contradiction there. But it's about variety. It's about using spices in a very subtle way to begin with, because kids actually do quite like a little bit of spice. Kids love garlic. A little bit of garlicky oil, green beans and carrots, plainly steamed, fine. But if you cook a tiny bit of garlic in oil or a little bit of butter, and you toss the vegetables in that little savory edge makes it just a little, there's something for them to catch onto there that they often really like. So a little bit of seasoning, not too much salt. Also, it's a bit of an easy win, salt. Kids do like salt, so you have to be a bit careful. You don't want them to get a salt. But little bit of, tiny bits of garlic, very, very small amounts of curry powder even can actually stimulate kids to like vegetables more rather than less.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Here, can you stick around for signing a few cookbooks and any questions in?
I would love to. Anyone who wants to come over and say hi and get a book signed, I'd be absolutely delighted.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.